Hello viewers, welcome to the Bachelor course of Population Studies. In our last lecture, we discussed about the population dynamics and economic growth. Today, we will talk about another topic on population and development priorities. The 20th century was a period of unprecedented demographic change. Because of a dramatic reduction in mortality, global population increased nearly fourfold, the fastest rate of growth in human history. The international response to rapid population growth was also unprecedented. Motivated by the concerns about the environmental and economic effects of population growth, and in recent years by women's right to enjoy reproductive health, the United Nations bilateral foreign aid agencies, multilateral institutions and private foundations invested billions of dollars in health and family planning programs. Many developing country governments, especially in Asia, vigorously pursued policies aimed at reducing fertility as well as mortality. In 1952, India was the first country in the world to launch a national program emphasizing family planning to the extent necessary for reducing birth rates to stabilize the population at a level consistent with the requirements of the national economy. Subsequently, through different population policies, India has adopted various strategies to control the population growth, so that the development priorities of the country may not suffer and the quality of life for common masses can increase. Today, India is an economy with 121 crore people and with an average growth rate of 8% per annum during the 11th 5-year plan. And if we just look at the average growth rate of GDP from 1951 until 2014, its average growth rate is 5.82% per annum. While such growth is impressive, India seeks to ensure that this abundance is shared across the nation. The 12th 5-year plan and the Millennium Development Goals to be achieved by 2015 help guide national policies and strategies for social and economic development along with the population control measures. The overriding objective of economic and social development is to improve the quality of life that people lead, to enhance their well-being and to provide them with opportunities and choices to become productive assets in the society. In this perspective, in order to improve the quality of life of Indian population, the country is committed to achieve universal primary education, improve maternal and child health, and of course, to reduce poverty. Thus, it is important to examine how does the rapidly growing population affects India's impressive economic growth and the commitment to improving the living standards of its citizens. The performance on account of each of these development goals actually depends upon the different levels of fertility rates. In this lecture, we shall discuss how two different scenarios with the assumption of high fertility rates and the low fertility rates would affect the rate of economic growth. The high fertility rate scenario is defined as the case of slow decline in fertility from 3.2 children per woman in 2001 to 2.5 by 2061, while the low fertility scenario assumes a greater decline in fertility from 3.2 children per woman to 1.9 children by 2040 and remains at this level through 2061. Let us discuss about population, economy and employment. With people at their center, the development goals aim to have an inclusive growth. The strongest medium through which the benefits of growth can be translated to the common masses is through employment. If growth of the economy is also associated with the growth of employment opportunities, the benefits of growth will be more equally spread as compared to the situations of jobless growth. Therefore, the objective of equitable and inclusive growth, the development goal is to reduce the unemployment rate. A large population size will affect India's ability to expand the labour force. The expansion in labour force of India can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that with high fertility, the demand for jobs will more than double in the next 50 years. By 2061, the number of people requiring jobs could reach 1,218 million, while with low fertility scenario, the labour force will almost taper off at about 750 to 780 million after 2040. Hence, it is necessary to control the population and bring the fertility rates down. Otherwise, the high fertility scenario will endanger the goal of minimizing the unemployment rate, as nearly 1/3 of India's population is under age 15 and will be entering the labour force very soon. Slower population growth would buy more time to create jobs for youth entering the labour force, ease high unemployment and thus contribute to economic development. Besides, the quality of employment is also a big issue, as currently about 93% of Indian labour force is employed in the informal sector. This informal sector is characterized by low paid and insecure jobs. Since India is actively joining the process of globalization, it is hard to imagine that the employment in the public sector would expand. Therefore, for better quality of employment, it is required that the skill levels of the workers should be enhanced so that their employability in the more productive sector increases. Otherwise, if the majority of the workers remain unskilled and the economic activity is dominated by highly productive service sector, the majority of the Indian workforce will be deprived to share the benefits of growth, which will aggravate the problem of poverty and inequality in the country. This raises the importance of the spread of education and health facilities in India. To build a 21st century model, India not only needs to universalize the primary education, but it also needs a strategy for adequate spread of higher education that is of high quality, yet equitable and affordable, and makes India a role model for higher education system that is not a dream that cannot be realized. With control of population, the expenditure on universal education can be saved and the same can be spared for higher education. Moreover, the participation by the private sector can also improve the situations significantly. For further elaboration of this development goal, let us first discuss about the expected increase in the number of primary students and the teachers required for them. These are shown in this figure for low as well as high fertility rate scenarios. The figure shows that in high fertility scenario, the number of primary students is expected to increase from 150 million in 2010 to about 225 million in 2061, and the requirement of the primary teachers in this fertility scenario is also likely to rise from about 2.6 million in 2010 to 5.7 million in 2060. On the other hand, in low fertility scenario, the number of primary students is expected to decline to about 110 million, and the requirement of the primary teachers will be merely 2.7 million, which means half the number of teachers would be needed by 2061 compared with the high fertility scenario. Obviously, with fewer students, more of the resources will be available per student, which will enhance the quality of primary education in the country. The improvements in the quality of primary education are much desired as they act as the base of the higher education. A weaker base with low quality cannot be translated into with better quality students in higher education. With lesser number of primary students in low fertility scenarios, lower number of teachers and related facilities will be required, which will lead to a fall in expenditure on primary education. The cumulative savings in case of low fertility scenario can be observed from this figure. The figure clearly shows that total expenditure on primary education is declining in case of low fertility scenario, while it is increasing in case of high fertility scenario. In the year 2060, it is estimated the expenditure in case of former scenario would be just half of the latter one, and between 2010 and 2061, the government will realize a cumulative cost savings of approximately rupees 5,43,015 crores or the US $121 billion. However, in future era of more intense globalization, when more of the sectors of the Indian economy will be opened up for foreign competition, our development priority will be to provide high quality higher education. Given the expected socio-economic scenarios in the coming time periods, India would need a robust higher education system that can deliver multiple imperatives. For this purpose, Ernst & Young and FICCI India have charted out the following development priorities. Number 1, developing a skilled, job-ready and productive workforce by imparting technical and soft skills training. Number 2, imparting education skills that enable students to become entrepreneur, enabling higher education graduates with global skills who can be employed by workforce deficient countries, enabling development of successful economic models at the grassroots, that is at district and block level, through community engagement. In this context, the Ernst & Young and FICCI India have projected that India will have the largest population in the higher education age bracket in the world. Since its income levels will also be increasing, there will be greater demand for higher education. In changing economic scenario, more than 250 million additional skilled manpower will be required across the industry and the service segments by 2030. Additionally, this could also serve international markets that are expected to be labor deficient. This will require greater attention towards career focused as well as the research focused institutions, which should be ensuring strong industry linkages across the education value chains and quality collaborations for cutting edge research. The major challenge before the Indian policymakers today is the low employability of Indian students. Many of our existing higher education institutions are simply not providing up to the mark education and training. These institutions are producing graduates in subjects that the job market no longer requires. The employability of the students in selected occupations can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that in majority of the occupations, more than 50% graduates are not employable. IT and the BPO sector has the lowest employability of the Indian graduates. In this figure, the employability actually refers to the presence of general skills as well as the specific skills. The general skills include the reliability, self-motivation and willingness to learn, while the specific skills means the ability of problem solving, design and conduct analysis. If more than 50% of our graduates are not employable, it means that they lack these skills. Therefore, it is important to develop those skills among the Indian students so that they can reap the benefits of changing economic conditions in the national as well as the global market. India occupies merely 2.4% of world's land area, on which it has to support the food requirements of nearly 17% of the world's population. Food security is the fundamental development objective of the country. In 2010, the targeted public distribution system of India covered 134 million people with food subsidy. However, under different fertility scenarios, the burden of providing food subsidy will be different, as the targeted public distribution system will have to cover more families in case of high fertility scenario as compared to the low fertility scenario. This can be observed from this figure. The figure shows that in order to provide food security to the poor, the population covered by the targeted public distribution system will increase from 134 million in 2010 to more than 250 million in case of high fertility scenario and about 150 million in case of low fertility scenario in 2060. This shows that the population growth will create a huge gap in the government burden to provide food security to its poorest segment of the population. This will lead to considerable savings in government expenditure on food subsidies. This is shown in this figure. The figure shows that in case of low fertility scenario, the food subsidy bill will cross a little above rupees 50,000 crores in 2060, while in case of high fertility scenario, it may shoot up more than rupees 85,000 crores. Therefore, it is necessary to control the fertility rate, as with this the government's cumulative savings in terms of expenditure on food subsidies will be about rupees 6,21,881 crores. This expenditure will fall further if at low fertility rate, at high rate of economic growth, more of the people are pulled out of the poverty traps. The food security is the first and foremost step for healthy population. In this respect, the improvements in access as well as the quality of healthcare facility is one of the development priorities before India. For this purpose, it aims to reduce the infant under 5 and maternal mortality rates. But with higher growth of population, the health expenditure and the expenditure on basic sanitation and other facilities such as provision of safe drinking water increases, causing a huge burden on government exchequer. In the current scenario, the health sector is already facing shortages of human as well as financial resources. If high fertility continues, the escalating demand for health services will place even greater pressure on an overburdened health system. In 2010, India spent rupees 300 or 6.7 US$ per person on healthcare, and the country aims to raise it at least rupees 325 at the constant prices. If the fertility rates remain high, this will mean a gigantic increase in health expenditure. The difference in health expenditure in high as well as low fertility scenarios can be observed from this figure. Figure shows that with high fertility, India would require 78,800 crores by the year 2060, while with low fertility it would mean merely rupees 54,000 crores. The difference between two fertility scenarios will mean a cumulative saving of rupees 5,38,000 crore between 2010 and 2060. With this, let us come to the conclusion of this lecture. The slogans of growth with human face or inclusive growth actually refers to the fact that the economic growth should always percolate equitably to majority of the population. This should be development and not merely growth. While the well-being of the majority of the population is the development priority of any welfare state, but at the same time, too much of the population may itself endanger the achievement of the same goals. For this purpose, it is necessary to keep check on the population growth. In this lecture, we have discussed that all the development priorities such as increasing employment opportunities, universalizing primary education, raising the quality of higher education, improvements in health facilities are relatively easier to achieve and sustain if the population grows at a slower rate, while the growth of population at faster rate in future time periods will increase the burden on government exchequer and thus make the development objectives harder to achieve. If the unchecked population growth takes our resources away from the development priorities of the country, then the first priority should be that of controlling the population. I expect that you would have been benefited from this discussion. In the next lecture, we shall discuss about the Population Census 2011. Till then, bye bye, have a nice time.